So hi there, this is Shubham and today we are going to see the code for the custom project which I made named Surviving the Space. I created a 2D game. The link is given in the description. Please do check it. Just for a quick glance, I am going to show you. This is the game. So just from the quick glance we can see we have a spaceship, we have different kind of objects. This is space junk, this is rock, this is bonus time. It has three fields: time, fuel, health. Score is going on, and basically spaceship needs to survive through all the chaos and trouble. So now let's just focus on the code. So this is how I created my program. It just create a window, and space game, which is a game manager, plays the sound in the background, and until the window is requested closed, it will loop around through entire thing. So I have created dot restart method. It is a kind of loop, like when the game will be over, restart will be set to true. So when you click the OK over there, so again the sound will play and again a new game will be started. So that kind of loop I created with restart. Process events is just checks if user has given any events, and it clears the screen to black, and then this game manager draws itself, then updates itself. Then I've set the refresh rate to 60, basically not just to have too quick motion of the images. And after everything is done, game window close, and we are back to our normal code. So let's just focus on the code. Yeah, we are having four kind of main objects participating in this. You can see a spaceship, like rock, space junk, bonus time, and there is a bonus fuel. So for them, let's go by one. I have tried to create one object oriented approach to go through that, not just simply creating classes. But yeah, let's just quickly go over what I've written. Yeah, so spaceship, yeah, it knows its mid map, health, location, fuel, and window. Basically, it knows the window size because I wanted to have this initial location right at the center at the top. So with the window, it can divide and put the X location over there. So yeah, it can have like properties like health getter setters, fuel. These are basically necessary because when the capture will happen or the spaceship captures, it should be able to change it for health or fuel or whatever. Yeah, locations. So it can draw itself. That's why it has iDrawable interface. iDrawable interface, I'll show you. It just have this function draw, and yeah. So we are at spaceship. So spaceship has a unique way to update itself depending upon the key. I've tried to reduce the code in the main program.cs file and try to give everything inside the class so that class has its own independence. These classes are independent and they are coordinating via game manager known as game space, and space game. We'll go to that, but yeah. So it'll update itself based upon the user input, any keys user plays, so it reduces fuel and all, because whenever spaceship moves, fuels get reduced. Yeah. So apart from spaceship, we have other four kind of things which are actually visible over there. One is space junk. Let's go over space junk, and one by one we'll go over everything: space junk, rock, bonus fuel, and bonus time. Yeah. So it is a kind of capture objects. Now all kind of objects, all these are like capture objects. These are coming from the bottom. These all are coming from the bottom and going above the screen. So that's why they have very much similarity. Like they have velocity, they have location, and they are actually similar kind of classes, and we need to adhere to this principle known as DRY, which is do not repeat yourself. So uh, instead of having this code duplicacy or redundancy, we can easily avoid it by creating a parent class which will inherit all the functions, all the similar functions and all. So for that purpose, I created capture objects. Capture objects is kind of you can say abstract class, because capture objects has no meaning per se, but yeah, it basically inherits, it gives out all its functionality to its child, which are all four things like fuel, time, rock, and space junk. All kind of objects that can interact with spaceship are kind of capture objects because they can be captured. Yeah, so capture objects can be iDrawable and iGame object. Now I have created an interface. We'll go on to that later. Let's just focus on capture objects. So every kind of capture objects is going to have location and velocity. It is very clear, and the location has been put random while y-axis has been decided. Like I want it anywhere randomly originated from the bottom, and y should be high because I want them to originate from the bottom to the up. Yeah, so I've created some random splashget dot random. It generates a random number, and I am using that. So every capture object should be able to return its bitmap. Why? Because at the later stage you want to check if someone has collided with you. So we need the bitmap of that thing. So this capture objects returns a bitmap because find we basically need to find the collision for the collision purpose. There is a function in Splashget that is bitmap collision. I'll use that later. Yeah. So it's similar, simple. It returns location. It updates the location. Yeah, it is pretty much simple. There is one thing known as collision checker. Collision checker is a function which will check, which will take the spaceship and the spaceship from the spaceship. It knows the position of the spaceship, and when I'll go to the objects, I'll show you. It knows the position of spaceship, and it knows every object knows its own position. So all the bitmaps can be compared, and so the given spaceship, it can know the bitmap of spaceship, and every object's known its own bitmap also. So they can have this establishment of bitmap collision. So it will check the bitmap of spaceship against its own bitmap and check if collision happens. If happens, it returns bool, true or false. So it is something like that. So I've created this parent class, which is just an abstract class. It has no role but to avoid the code redundancy. Yeah, and we are heading towards a more object-oriented approach to write programs. Yeah. So let's come on to this iGame object. iGame object is an interface which I had created. Basically, I am using this interface later to instantiate all the objects. So I'll use polymorphism. It like interface I've created. I've inherited it to capture objects means it is parent class of capture object, which is further parent class of all four kinds of objects, which is bonus fuel, bonus time, rock, and space junk. So it is also parent of those, grandparent you can say. Yeah, so it can access all those things. So later I've applied factory design pattern in which I've used instantiate object kind of a class which will actually instantiate all the objects and return it to space game, which is the game manager. So I am kind of using this ideology of creating interface so that I should be able to have this nice code with certain complexity and this expandable nature. Like I can have this code expanded really nicely. I'll show you how. In the later stage, we'll get to know. So it is basically an interface and it governs all the method any game object should have. So let's just go on to the objects. Let's just start with game chunk, space chunk. Space chunk is a kind of capture objects we have decided, we have already know. So space chunk can damage. We have, so it has a damage parameter. Obviously, it's not known its bitmap also. Not big deal here. Like constructor, it returns damage, draws itself. Yeah, this is the collision checker. So this is a function splashkit.bitmap collision. It knows its bitmap, puts the bitmap of itself and its location, and it, because it knows spaceship, it knows spaceship bitmap and its location also. They are getters inside over there. So it basically returns true if bitmaps collide and false if bitmaps don't collide. So that's why it's having collision check. So every capture object will have the ability to check if it has collided with the spaceship or not, and returns true if it does and returns false if it doesn't. Fairly simple. So far so good. Similar to that, we have this rock objects. It's almost same, but it has different damage value, it has different bitmaps and different locations, so we gotta have a different class for it. Yeah, and it can also check the collision. Similarly, we'll go with bonus time. It has increment instead of damage, so it will increment the time. So it will just get the value of time, and it will have this increment, set a new value, increase probably. Yeah. So similarly with fuel, it has its own increment and it goes similar just like the other classes. So now we have discussed all four main objects which we can see, but they are individual. We have looked after them what they can do, but how are they collaborating with each other, coordinating with each other, reacting as per different scenarios, like how will they capture, how, what will happen when they capture. So yeah, so these kind of objects, these kind of things will be monitored by our game manager, which is space game. So we have created a separate class altogether which will just deal with the things happening. So it does not need to know who does, like how someone is doing something, but it just need to order. Like if he wants something, he can just order, just like a manager, just like a manager in hotel. Like it does not need to do the work, but it basically needs output, and it'll make people coordinate, it'll make cashier coordinate, it'll look after cashier, it'll look after waiters, it'll look after the guard, everything, the waiter, food quality, chefs, everything this manager does. Similarly, everything here space game does, not on its own but the coordination part. So it knows everything, windows, space shape. It has a list of game objects now. uh, like different kind of game objects are gonna pop up in the screen, like we can see here different kind of game objects are coming. So it will have list of all the game objects over there. So it has a class known collision handler, whose responsibility is to handle the collision. What happens if two things collide? This collision handler will know all along. So the space game will just tell, okay, collision handler, handle the collision if it happens. So yeah, it just need to command. So it has a timer for running time, timer for score. So how the scores will change. It has it is a splash kit function score. So game status. Game status is basically just to check if the game is over or the game is not over. For example, the health becomes 0, the fuel becomes 0, or uh, what is the other aspect? The time becomes 0. So game status will just execute that thing. It will just check the high score and all. Yeah. So restart is basically to reloop after the game is over. I don't want the windows to get shut. it'll just reloop. So it also has instance. This is where the factory design pattern established. So I have a separate class instantiate object which will actually instantiate all the objects of iGame object types. We'll go over to that. Just now focus on space game. Yeah. So space game will have this draw function call in the program. We have seen in the program. Uh, we have created space game and we are asking for draw. So entire program starts with this. So it allows two things to draw all the objects and draw the UI. So it will go to the UI. Okay, UI, let's draw yourself. So it first of all loads the bitmap of the background. Background we are seeing this sky, this space, stars and all. So it will load the background and it just simply prints. And then it just prints the surviving the space, which is this part. This is getting printed over here. And then it just print the time, the fuel. So you can see that it also gets decreased. It changes its color after a certain value. So yeah, it's look after draw UI because it is the user interface. User is seeing this and it's being drawing. Its job has been given to him. And the score is also, score has a color, beautiful color gold. So it's handling that. Now let's go to the other object. Now it says draw objects. Now draw objects will simply ask the spaceship to draw itself, and it will ask for each game object which is a drawable object to draw themselves. So whichever objects are there, they will be able to draw themselves. That is where the draw interface is coming into the play. So for each game objects, everyone will be able to draw themselves. Okay, cool. Yeah. So now coming down to the other thing, which is update. Now the space game needs to update all this. Is update function. Yeah. Initialize game objects. Now it will initialize the game objects. Initialize, let's just look at the initialize class. Instantiate objects. So instantiate like for example, initialize, let's just look at initialize. Let me just find initialize. Yeah, so there is the initialize game object. So it basically loads all the resources. In the loads resources, we are basically initializing the setup now. So all the what you say, there is loads resources. Yeah, so there are fonts which are getting loaded. The sound effect get loaded in the program itself. So yeah, it loads all the resources which we are using here. So you can see different kinds of fonts here. Surviving space has different font, this is different. So it's all loading this, and after that creates a random number and calls instantiate objects and add those objects to its list. So it's basically asking instantiate object, create an object. It is asking, okay, instantiate object, I want an object. Now give me an object. So instantiate object pops up with an object and it adds to the list of game objects. So let's see how instantiate objects work here. So instantiate objects is very simple. Like it knows the object, and based on certain values it randomly, so if the value is less than 2, it will create an object of bonus time. If the value is between 2 and 4, bonus fuel. And I want certain high number of obstacles because too many powers doesn't make any sense. So larger number, rock, again a larger number, space junk. So it returns the space. So it basically, it for a certain values it creates different kind of objects and returns it, which is further added to the list by this object. So it's fairly simple. Yeah. So update objects. Now let's just get update objects. Yeah, update objects. So okay, it's asking, okay, spaceship, update yourself. Spaceship will execute the update. And similarly, all the game objects which is there in the list, please update yourself. Simple as that. Everyone is gonna update. Now where is the update? Let's just go to the update. Yeah. So handle collision. Next is the handle collision. Let's just quickly look at the handle collision. In the handle collision, it basically asking the collision handler if it is collided. So let's just look at collision handler how it works. So it is also fairly simple. It knows the spaceship and the game objects. Collision handler takes the spaceship and the game objects and checks if they two collided. So if they have collided, it will check for each object if the spaceship has collided by collision checker, and if they have collided, it will just return that object. But we are asking is collided. So if there is a collision, it will return true. If there is not a collision, it will return false. So let's just be back here. So it says okay, it has collided. Now come into here. So now it it just gets the object which is collided. After getting the object which is collided, it checks what type of object it is, and based on the type of the power up or the capture object or a game object, it does something like reduces fuel, increases fuel, increases time, or decrease health, or something like that, based on the type. And finally, you call remove object. So if something has captured, it needs to be removed. The objects, then collision handler simply this remove object simply checks if the collision has happened, and if happened, that objects get removed from the list. It is simple as that. So now again, let's go to the update check status. Now check status is a function which will check if the game is going on or it's shut. So it will give everything, fuel, score, health, to the game status thing. Now the game status class will have everything. We'll check if time has become 0, if fuel has become 0, health has become 0, and if anything has become 0, the game is over. Is true. And when the game over is true, the game has to restart. But before that, what actually happens is it asks game over at a certain point, and it when the game is over, the score gets stopped, the time gets stopped, and it checks for the score. So if the score is high, so first of all it will read the score. It will open a text file. It will just a high score reader. It will read the file, and it will determine if the score is high or not. And if the score is high, it will write it to it. And if the score is low, it won't do anything. So it just prints here. Game over, your score is this, your score is that. Simple as that. So with that, we put an end to our update also. Now let's go back to program. Now it will refresh. Now the window will refresh and again go on, until unless we are asking it to close. And when it is closed, the game is kind of lost. Game over. So that's up for me. This is Shubham Sharma, object-oriented programming, surviving the space 2D game using C# and splashkit.io. See you.